Today on Trending 55, we are talking with a candidate for the leadership of the Federal Conservative Party of Canada, Dr. Leslyn Lewis. And first off, Dr. Lewis, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, great. So first off, Dr. Lewis, what made you decide to enter the CPC leadership race?
Well, I think that there are a number of issues that I felt that just weren't being addressed the way that I would like to see them addressed, and these include things such as having a strong economy, making sure that Canadians have affordable living, and that the Canadian dream is not being eroded, and also, just making sure that we uphold our fundamental freedoms and the rights of parents to raise their children in accordance with their own values, and also to secure our social safety nets for future generations.
Okay, awesome. And also as well, we know it too that we received a very public endorsement from our local MLA, Peace River MLA Dan Williams. And how meaningful was that endorsement to have from MLA Williams?
Well, it was absolutely meaningful because it sent the message that people understand my authenticity, and especially from the region where he's from, there are core issues that are important. People have to understand, and leaders have to understand just how intricately connected their natural resources of Alberta are to the development of the entire country. And it's something that I've been speaking a lot about, and just his endorsement tells me that the message is getting across and that they see me as somebody that they can trust to deliver that message throughout the rest of the country.
Okay, Dr. Lewis. Now, one thing that MLA Williams did refer to you in his tweet is someone who is truly conservative. And in your opinion, what is your definition of true conservative values? And would you say that you and MLA Williams see eye to eye on mainly issues like for conscience rights, for example? I know when you when you were tweeting back your response for his endorsement that you had mentioned that conscience rights and his fight for conscience rights was something you really admired.
Yes, I actually do think it's a very, very important part of our legacy to redefine who we are, because we've moved so much to the left. And I think that much of it has been conjured up because of fear, and because conservatives have bought into this notion that unless they move more to the left and they're more liberal-like, that we cannot win an election. And so I'm operating off of a completely antithetical premise that I believe that it is our movement away from our conservative values that has caused this elections. And so that's what I'm putting forth. And so issues like conscience rights are very, very important, because that goes to the core of who we are as conservatives. And, professionals should not have to act against their conscience, whether they are doctors or whether they're an elected officials. There are just some issues that people feel that they cannot act against because it goes to the core of who they are.
All right, Dr. Lewis. And should you win the leadership and eventually become Prime Minister of Canada, how high on your list of priorities is reaching out to Alberta to try and repair what many people in our province see as bad relations between the federal government and our provinces? Repairing that of high priority to you?
Well, it is a very high priority, and I don't think it's an insurmountable task. I think it's something that is very feasible if one takes the time to really find out what some of the issues of contention are. We can form viable resolutions. And when I went to Alberta in February, I developed a very deep emotion and empathy for Albertans, because I witnessed the firsthand devastation of the province. I saw, lost jobs and people who lost their homes. And just the level of alienation that was faced became extremely real to me, although it was real before, but I had more of a firsthand account. And there are a number of issues that I think that we have to address in order to unite this country. And, I'll just list four of them. One is just the sheer Western alienation. I think that has to be addressed. And issues of, of how we even divide up our ridings and equalization. Those issues, they're not going to go away. And so I think that we have to start addressing some of the contradictions, such as even what we're doing today and the messages that we're sending. Trudeau gave $252 million to farmers, while he allocated $9 billion for students and $650 million for the WHO. That's a present-day message that's sent to Alberta that your farmers and the farmers throughout the country don't mean as much as these other categories. And so these are the things that we have to start changing if we are going to unite the country and demonstrate to these regions that are experiencing alienation that we actually care and we're listening.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, for that, Dr. Lewis. I'm sure a lot of farmers will be happy to hear that. And I guess now that still have a few minutes here, I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on the government and the federal government's current response to the pandemic?
Well, I'm always careful when I answer this question because it's easy to look in hindsight and cast aspersions on what has been done. But my position is that I think that we should be forward-looking and see how we can, get out of this current situation. And it's not going to be something that we can fix overnight. I feel that the deficit that we have amassed is something that is going to take years to get out of, and it's going to require long-term planning. And so I think that the only way to do that is to stimulate small and medium-sized businesses, get them back to work, because we know they employ over 80% of all Canadians. And so there's some policies that we're going to need to put in place to stimulate the economy, such as cutting red tape, making sure that these businesses can create jobs, because we now have students graduating from school and competing with their parents for jobs. And if you compound that with the 187,000 Albertans that were out of work pre-COVID, we know that we have to do things differently. So we need to develop our manufacturing sector. We need to develop our natural resources in Alberta. We have to start investing in making sure that we're not bringing in foreign products. Like we don't need to bring in foreign oil. We can produce oil here. And yeah, there are price issues that we could implement certain policies to offset that. But I think that we really have to be very inwardly focused and have a Canada First strategy.
All right, excellent. And Dr. Lewis, you kind of answered my next question in terms of how we move forward from this. So moving on to the next question here, why do you feel that you are the best candidate to lead the CPC at this time?
Well, I think right now we're not only looking at a situation where we have to unite the party, because the party has to come back to the big tent philosophy where we are respectful of divergent perspectives, and that includes people from the progressive side and people from the social conservative side. And you're going to need a leader that just doesn't come in and say, you know what, you have to follow my command. What I propose as a leader is to lead as, working together with the existing MPs. So I would be the first among equals, and we would harmoniously find a way to unite the party together, and then we would take on the country. So I think that at this point in time, people are looking for someone who is not a part of the party establishment, who can connect with the grassroots, who can broaden the base, who can bring in diverse groups into the party, broaden the big tent, and there's no other person that can do that other than me.
All right, Doc. Yeah, for sure. And I guess one thing I was going to suggest on that, too, is that, and one thing, and Dan had said this Dan Williams, MLA for Peace River, had mentioned this in an interview that I had done with him last week about endorsing you as a candidate. And one thing he had said is, in his words, and quote, Dr. Lewis doesn't need to look at a poll to know what it means to be truly conservative, and that's why one major reason she has my support. So I'm guessing at the top of the thing, you're not going to be that, are you that type that kind of keeps an eye on the polls or anything like that, or that's not part of who we are?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm doing this because I know that it needs to be done at this particular time for our country. And so I'm not one that is really concerned with popularity. I'm concerned with doing the right thing for our country. And so I've taken some positions that aren't popular and that, are not even safe to take. But I know when I see families being eroded, I know that I have to stand up for that. When I see our democracy being eroded, I know that I have to question certain activities. And so I'm not looking to be the most popular person. I'm looking to do the right thing. And so once I stand on those principles, I believe that the grassroots and that the members will reward me for that.
All right, Dr. Lewis, is there anything else you'd like to touch on while we have you on the line?
Well, I think it's very important that we focus on our national unity, that we focus on strengthening our democracy, and that we work together and we unite to build a strong economy and invoke fiscal responsibility. I believe that unity is our strength.
Great, Dr. Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Trending 55 newsroom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.